Good evening. I'm the Maven of the Eventide, and when I die, bury me in vampire books. No, wait. Turn me into one of those funeral trees that you can grow out of your remains. You know, those like kits that you can get. And then let the tree grow, and then harvest the tree and turn it into paper to make a vampire book out of it. So I know I just did one of these vampire books videos recently, but since then, I have acquired some more vampire books, mostly sent to me by you. Thank you so much. I'm going to show you all the vampire books I've received since the last video that I did, and oh my goodness, it's a lot. You can't see them all here. Yeah, the camera's cutting them off, but you shall see them soon. Firstly, what have we here? I kind of order them by size, so they're not in any particular order, they're just stacked by size, so that way they don't fall over because it was a tall stack. This is the Holmes Dracula file. This is a Sherlock Holmes Dracula crossover, which has been done many times, but this particular one is by Fred Saberhagen. This is actually the second book in the Dracula tapes series, which I have not read, so I have always been curious about the Dracula tapes. People tell me about it all the time, so thank you very much. These are the first 3 books in the Night Huntress series, Halfway to the Grave, One Foot in the Grave, and At Grave's End, by Janine Frost. Sometimes you have to fight the undead with the half-dead. Flirting with the grave, half-vampire Catherine Crawfield is going after the undead with a vengeance, hoping that one of these deadbeats is her father, the one responsible for ruining her mother's life. Then she's captured by Bones, a vampire bounty hunter, and is forced into an unholy partnership. Urban fantasy. The person who sent it to me said it was one of their favorite series, so I'm excited to check it out. Now, this one's called One Foot in the Grave, not to be confused with this book, One Foot in the Grave by W.N. Mark Simmons. This is billed as Dracula Meets the Godfather, so it's mafia-style adventures. Unfortunately, they believe in him. Christopher doesn't believe in vampires, not until he becomes one. He doesn't believe in witches or werewolves either, not until they make him an offer he can't refuse. The 2 very different books, called One Foot in the Grave, both kind of in the urban fantasy genre, with very different types of protagonists. Another urban fantasy, The Vampire Agent, by Patricia Rosemore and Mark Paoletti. Beyond creepy, a frightening, wildly imaginative tale that takes the reader on a shocking ride. On the sultry streets of New Orleans, Captain Scott Boulder and Lane Maguire are about to begin a deadly mission. The traumatized, genetically altered subjects of a Department of Defense experiment gone wrong have escaped. Among them, Rachel Ackert, a beautiful, seductive, and powerful woman who is now under the dangerous influence of Andre Espinosa de Madrid, a vampire of incomparable evil and power. I love vampire books set in New Orleans. As a big Anne Rice fan, who wouldn't? We have her to thank for that being a thing. But as one of the oldest, most haunted cities in America, it seems appropriate for vampires to love it too. So atmospheric. So many graves. Because Your Vampire Said So by Michelle Bardsley. This is paranormal romance, and it's got one of those very early 2000s chick lit covers. Even undead moms get taken for granted. It's true. We do. When you're immortal, being a mom won't kill you. It'll only make you stronger. Because women, not just anyone can visit Broken Heart, Oklahoma, especially since all the single moms like me, Patsy Donahue, have been turned into vampires. All of them? Wow. I'm forever 40, but looking younger than my years thanks to my new lifestyle. And even though most of my customers have skipped town, I still manage to keep my hair salon up and running because of the lycanthropes prowling around. They know how important good grooming is. It's true, they do. Especially a certain rogue shapeshifter who is as sexy as he is deadly. Now, if only I could put a leash on my wild teenage son. He's up to his neck in danger. The stress would kill me if I weren't already dead. But my matriarchal instincts are still alive and kicking, so no one better to mess with my flesh and blood. This sounds like a lot of fun. By the author of Don't Talk Back to Your Vampire, which I think sounds like it would be the first in the series. This didn't sound like the first in the series, so I'm curious why this particular one was sent to me. Maybe it's the best in the series. That happens sometimes. This is Dark Wars, the tale of Meiji Dracula by Hideyuki Kikuchi, who was the author of Vampire Hunter D. This is a different novel. From Japan's master of horror, Hideyuki Kikuchi, comes a terrifying, action-packed vampire thriller. And I do have some of the Vampire Hunter D novels too, so it will be interesting to see a different take on vampires from the same author. This is the Immortal Wars series by Susan Madron. We have Nemesis, Lamia, The Tower, Scylla. I wonder if this is based on the Odyssey. A God in the House of Crosses. Summary of Book 1. When an amnesiac deity, maybe it is based on the Odyssey, is accidentally resurrected by an ancient evil, his only hope of remembering who and what he once was is a vampire named Lamia. When she runs to him for protection, an inescapable fate is unleashed upon them both as they fight to survive. Nemesis is the first installment in the Immortal War series. And now I have all 5 installments, thank you. This is a beautiful copy of The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. I love this book. I have read it, but I never owned a copy. I had read it on ebook, and then I had found a copy in the basement of my old apartment, and it was all ripped up, but at least I have a copy. But someone sent me this beautiful non-ripped up copy, so now it can actually sit on my shelves with honor. Thank you so much. This is a really good book. If you have not read this book, this is probably one of my top 10 vampire books of all time. Highly recommended, especially if you like literary fiction. It's kind of like a much less pulpy version of the Da Vinci Code, but with Dracula. And really well written. A Vampire Christmas Carol. Ebenezer Scrooge. Vampire Slayer. My mother found this one at a Goodwill, I think. She got it for like 25 cents. I love mashups of gothic things. Ebenezer Scrooge has never been known for the greatness of his heart. A miser, a leech, a penny-pinching old coot. Say what you will about him, though. He's never actually sucked someone's blood. That dubious honor belongs to the vampires who surround him, preying on the weak and laying traps for the strong. They've dogged his footsteps since he was born, driving him from the love of his friends, family, and faithful fiancé. Oh, so that's why Scrooge is such an asshole. Vampires! Go figure. Now, on a Christmas Eve, Scrooge's old friend Jacob Marley rises from the grave to warn him about the evil gathering around him. With 3 mysterious spirits to guide him, he rediscovers his lost love Belle, toiling fearlessly as a seamstress by day and vampire hunter by night. Oh, go Belle! He sees the secrets of his nephew Fred and his clerk Bob Cratchit, who risked their lives as Belle's loyal soldiers. Everyone's a vampire hunter. And he learns of the plot amounting to attack all of them, starting with the innocent sacrifice of Bob's son, Tiny Tim. Scrooge has only one night to save himself, and all that once treasured. If he can vanquish the vampires, he might finally earn back the love he cast away. Oh, does he get back together with Belle in this? Aww. This is by Sarah Gray. Happy Hour at Casa Dracula by Marta Acosta. Another early 2000s chick-lit-looking cover, but this one seems to be more of a comedy. A spicy comedy of manners with fangs. Oh, I love comedies of manners. Latina Ivy League grad Malargo de los Santos can't find her place in the world or a man to go with it. Then one night, at a book party for her pretentious ex-boyfriend, she meets an oddly attractive man. After she is bitten while kissing him, she falls ill and is squirreled away to his family estate to recover. Vampires don't exist in this day and age, or do they? As Milagro falls for a fabulously inappropriate man, she finds herself caught between a family that has accepted her as one of its own and a powerful clandestine organization that refuses to let the undead live in love and peace. Intriguing. Vampires, margaritas, mayhem. What's a girl to do when she's hidden away at the home of a sophisticated vampires and her ex-boyfriend wants to drive a stake through her heart? Caution, upon reading, hilarity ensues. The Quick by Lauren Owen. I have heard of this book for a long time, but I never knew it was a vampire book. I just thought it was a gothic book, which is what interested me about it, but apparently it's also a vampire book. Deborah Harkness says that Owen takes the gothic conventions of the vampire novel in a refreshing new direction. London, 1892. James Norbury, a young would-be poet, finds lodging with a charming aristocrat. Then suddenly he vanishes. Alarmed, his sheltered sister Charlotte sets out from her country home to find him. She soon uncovers the city's secret, supernatural netherworld populated from the top to the dregs by terrifying creatures. But where is her missing brother? This is such a pretty cover, too. Love the little bat up on the moon. Thank you for sending this to me. Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Shauna McGuire. This is book 2 in the Wayward children's series, prequel to Every Heart a Doorway. And it's not a vampire series, but this is a vampire book. And I got Every Heart a Doorway a while back as a gift. And then I got this book as a gift from one of my pen pals, which had been on my wish list for a long time. And I didn't even realize it was going to be a vampire book because there's a lot of different characters from different worlds in the series. And one of them had come from a vampire world, and this just happened to be the story about those characters. And I read it. I read it like last week. It's very short. You can read it very fast, and it's really good. So I would recommend this. You don't have to have read Every Heart a Doorway to be able to read this book because it's a prequel, though it might enhance your reading experience if you do. That book is likewise short. Vampires and gothic moors and mad scientists, everything you could want. This book is not mine. This is A Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. It's the sequel to Carry On, which I do own. And I have wanted this book since it came out last September. And I put it on my wish list, and I haven't received it yet. But I was at the library, and I saw it there. So I borrowed it, and then I read it in a day. It was such a fast, wonderful read. I love this book so much. If you haven't read Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, you do need to read that one first before you read this one. It's much longer than this, but this one I read in less than 24 hours. That's what a good read it was. I really loved it. I'm not going to spoil anything for it, but this character is a vampire, and his boyfriend is not. And I do still want to own this book, but I'm glad that I actually read it. But I have to take this back to the library now. The We Walk the Night series in 2 omnibus volumes by Sean Barber. We got the first omnibus and the second omnibus. The dead walk among us. Vampires live among mortals, preying on them from the shadows. For centuries, they have been held in check by the Order of Kresnik, a clandestine organization of vampire hunters empowered by animistic primal spirits. Baltimore, Maryland, 2014. 3 young initiates to the Order of Kresnik embark on a training hunt under the watchful eyes of more experienced hunters. But what was to be a simple exercise becomes so much more as the Kresniks find themselves in a web of terror and intrigue involving ancient vampires, fey conspiracies, and the machinations of godlike beings. The battle for the night has only just begun. Omnibus 1 contains the first 4 novellas. Omnibus 2 contains the second 4 novellas, so you have all 8 in 2 books. Thank you for sending these to me. The Vampire Genevieve by Jack Yuleville, which is not the author's real name. You would know this author as Kim Newman, author of Anno Dracula, but he wrote The Vampire Genevieve for the Warhammer franchise. And I've been told by the wonderful person who sent this book to me that he liked The Vampire Genevieve so much that he wound up incorporating her into his other vampire books. So if you've read any of the Anno Dracula series, this is by the same author, but you will find it under Jack Yeovil. Evil has a new enemy, one of its own. Meet Genevieve. She's beautiful, powerful, resourceful, and courageous, and over 400 years old. In the crowded cities and the dark force of the Warhammer world, Genevieve and her unlikely companions battle the forces of evil and insanity. However, the vampire blood running through Genevieve's veins means she must constantly fight the urge to surrender to the evil within her. The Vampire Genevieve collects together all the tales of Genevieve and her unusual allies into one packed volume. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 novels, plus a new introduction by the author, all together in one brick of a book. Here we have 3 more Vampire Hunter D novels. I've got White Devil Mountain, parts 1 and 2, Aria and Berserker, and Record of the Blood Battle. And I believe these are books 21, 22, and 23. And the person who sent these to me has all the books, and they told me that they had extras of these 3 books, so now I have them. And they told me that I don't have to have read the other 20 books before them in order to read these. I do have 2 of the other Vampire Hunter D novels, the 2 that the movies are based on. So those will give me a good enough foundation to read these. But these are all brand new and shiny. Thank you for sending them. Finally, I have a copy of Thirst #1, which is the collected edition of the first 3 novels in the Last Vampire series by Christopher Pike. That series was my formative series as a young vampire fan. The first vampire books I read as a preteen that really made me love vampires. And they were re-released as the Thirst series, and I never owned them this way. And I bought these continuations used recently at a used bookstore, but they didn't have #1. So someone sent it to me. It's a used version, but it's in very good shape. Thank you so much. And the same person also sent me Thirst #5, which after they re-released the first 6 books as Thirst 1 and 2, the author came along and wrote more in the same series with the same character, which I have not read. So now I've got Thirst #5, and I have 2, 3, and 4 from my used bookstore experience. So now I have them all. Thank you so much. Sita was my favorite vampire before, I discovered Lestat. This is Solace by Gail Carriger, which I've actually owned for a while because a friend told me that I would probably love it because it's gothic and it's sort of like a Victorian gothic monster mashup. And yet, I did not realize it was a vampire book, so it's been on my gothic mashup shelf instead of on my vampire shelf. But it says right here on the front, a novel of vampires, werewolves, and parasols. The Solace series has been around for a while, and this is just the first book in the series, but this particular edition was a re-released version, and it's autographed, and it's got this beautiful art in it. It's just a wonderful edition, so I'm very happy that the person who gave me this as a gift way back when they actually gave it to me, gave me this edition. Alexa Terabati is laboring under a great many social tribulations. First, she has no soul. Second, she's a spinster whose father is both Italian and dead. Oh, so hard for her. Third, she was rudely attacked by a vampire, breaking all standards of social etiquette. Where to go from here? From bad to worse, apparently, for Alexa accidentally kills the vampire, and then the appalling Lord Macon, loud, messy, gorgeous, and werewolf, is sent by Queen Victoria to investigate. With unexpected vampires appearing and expected vampires disappearing, everyone seems to believe Alexa is responsible. Can she figure out what is actually happening to London's high society? Will her soulless ability to negate supernatural powers prove useful or just plain embarrassing? Finally, who is the real enemy, and do they have treacle tart? So Victorian, so precious. Vampire City by Paul Feval. This is a classic vampire book, and it's one of those classics that was very important back when vampires were first becoming a literary thing that you've probably never heard of, at least not as much as you would have heard of Carmilla or Polydorius the Vampire, but Vampire City is one of those, and I was unfamiliar with it, and I had never owned it, and someone learned that about me and was appalled, so they sent it to me, so now I have it. Some tell of a great city of black jasper, which has streets and buildings like any other city, but is eternally in mourning, enveloped by perpetual gloom. Some call it Selene, some Vampire City, but the vampires refer to it among themselves by the name of Sepulchre. To destroy the dreaded vampire lord Otto Giozzi, writer Anne Radcliffe, Mary Bones, the Irishman, and Grey Jack, her faithful servant, launch an all-out attack on Selene. So is this like real-person fanfic of Anne Radcliffe? Oh, 1800s, what were you doing? Vampire City was written in 1867, 30 years before Dracula. So why haven't you read it yet? Paul Feval was the author of numerous popular swashbuckling novels and one of the fathers of the modern crime thriller. Translated into English, of course. This is Only the Dead Know Burbank, which I have also owned for a while, and I got it because you see the Phantom of the Opera right here, and it's about like the movie scene in old-timey Hollywood cinema, and I didn't realize it was actually had vampires in it, but I've been informed recently it does. I've owned it for a while, but I haven't read it yet, so unless I was informed incorrectly, this does have vampires in it. I mean, from the summary, it kind of sounds like it. A young girl awakens in a hastily dug grave. Vague memories of blood and fever. Her mother performing a mysterious ceremony before the world went away. Maybe she's just another kind of undead? Germany has lost the First World War, and Europe has lost millions more to the Spanish flu epidemic. Maddie has not only survived, but also changed. Into a vampire? And at a studio in Berlin, Mandy discovers her true calling, film. With her intimate knowledge of fear, death, and the realms beyond the living, she practically invents the modern horror genre on the spot. Before long, she travels to California and insinuates herself in Hollywood as the genius secretly behind the Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, and Frankenstein. Sounds like my kind of girl. This is Kitsumonogatari, Wound Tale by Nishio-sen, and it's illustrated. Art by Vofan, translated by Ko Ransom. Around midnight, under a lonely street lamp in a provincial town in Japan lies a white woman, a blonde, alone, robbed of all 4 limbs, yet undead. Indeed, a rumor's been circulating among the local girls that a vampire has come to their backwater of all places. Koyomi, who prefers to avoid having friends because they'd lower his intensity as a human, is naturally skeptical. Yet it is to him that the blood-sucking demon, a concept dated twice over, beckons on the first day of spring break as he makes his way home with fresh loot of morally compromising periodicals. Always disarmingly candid, often hilariously playful, and sometimes devastatingly moving, Wound Tale is the perfect gateway into the world of this author, the best-selling novelist in Japan today. It's the prequel to Monster Tale, and this is where the legendary Monogatari series, whose anime adaptations have enjoyed international popularity and critical acclaim, begins. A theatrical feature based on this book is due to be released in Japan in January 2016. I wonder if that actually happened. Japanese vampires are a whole different thing. Thank you for sending me this. I always love broadening my horizons into things that I wouldn't have found otherwise. Did the movie come out? Was it any good? I'm curious. Let me know. The Secret History of Vampires. There are multiple forms and hidden purposes, by Claude Lecouteux. This is nonfiction. It's a folklore mythology nonfiction book. Of all the forms taken by the undead, the vampire wields the most powerful pull on the modern imagination. I know! I made a whole show about it on YouTube. You can watch it. Watch my videos. But the countless movies and books inspired by this child of the night who has a predilection for human blood are based on incidents recorded as fact in newspapers and judicial archives in the centuries preceding the works of Bram Stoker and other writers. It's true, we call them legends and lore. Digging through these forgotten records, Claude Lecouteux unearths a very different figure of the vampire in the many accounts of individuals who reportedly would return from the graves to attack the living. These ancestors of the modern vampire were not all bloodsuckers. As Lecouteux shows, the belief in vampires predates ancient Roman times, which abound with lamia, strigets, and ghouls, discarding the tacked-together explanations of modern science for these inexplicable phenomena. The author looks back to another folk belief that has come down through the centuries, like that of the undead, the existence of multiple souls in every individual, not all of which are able to move on to the next world after death. What an interesting take. I have not heard anyone talk about that before. So, curious. Thank you for sending this to me. Vampires at the Opera by Christine Prebler. This is a book I have wanted for many, many years as a Phantom of the Opera fan. It's a vampire Phantom of the Opera mashup, and it's been on my wish list for over a decade, and someone just sent it to me. I don't know if they knew it was on my wish list or if they were just like, she would like this, because I would. It's a used copy, and it has all these stickers on it. I'm trying to peel them off, but I haven't been very successful yet. It's vampire romance. Two legends together in one incredible story. What if Count Vlad Dracula and Eric, the Phantom of the Opera, not only knew each other, but formed an alliance? This exciting, unique story crosses two of the most widely read Gothic novels, Dracula and Phantom of the Opera. Vampires at the Opera openly explores the steamy romantic relationships of soulmates Christine and Eric and Mina and Dracula. Oh my god, it's a shippy book! The tale begins soon after the famous Stoker novel ends, when Dracula escapes capture by the group of vampire hunters and travels to the Paris Opera House. As you do, that's where I would go, to seek sanctuary and the aid of his friend, the Phantom. Oh, they're friends. Dracula wants them to travel back together to England to rescue Mina, the love of his life. Unbeknownst to Stoker, Mina kept an additional secret diary entries detailing a very passionate romance with Dracula in London. Yeah, maybe Stoker didn't know that, but apparently everyone who's interpreted Dracula since has known that. I guess they found those diaries because, the book is so romantic. First, however, Dracula must solve Eric's situation with his lover Christine Daae, dealing with the inept but earnest Rowell. Aw, they're a Rowell hater. the Vicomte de Chagny, Christine wants him out of the way so she and the Phantom can remain safe and happy, living beneath the opera house. Is Dracula going to kill Rowell? Once the Phantom's dilemma is resolved, the two monsters plan their journey back to England, where they discover Mina is now pregnant with her husband Jonathan Harker's child. That, hussy! What's a vampire to do? Bring Mina back to Paris, turn her into a vampire, or leave her to live as a mortal in England? Enjoy this dark, erotic tale of two legendary monsters. Oh, is it a sexy book? Is there sex in this book? How un-Victorian. Thank you for sending this to me. This is actually going to go on my Phantom of the Opera shelf, but I had to tell you about it because vampires. The Book of Nod. This is a companion book to Vampire the Masquerade. I have been playing Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines on my YouTube channel, which you're watching, so if you're interested in that, you should watch my playthroughs. This is a book that's supposed to give a lot of backstory to the lore of the vampires and where they came from. Legends of the Undead. The first vampires remember their first nights, but do not speak of them. Others have heard tales, but know better than to believe them. The wise speak of the Book of Nod, but none have seen this fabled book of ancient lore. These are their tales. Their stories begin with the Chronicle of Cain. You know, Cain from the Bible, because he was a jerk, so he must be a vampire. And the earliest nights of the vampire. The Chronicle of Shadows reveals Cain's hidden teachings. Finally, the Chronicle of Secrets unveils the deepest mysteries of the damned, including the coming of the dread Gehenna. And I know from Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines that Gehenna is a thing they talk about often. It's a cute little book. I love the silver pages, illustrations. I haven't read it yet, but looking forward to it. It's very artistic. I love it when books aren't just books, but are also art. Lastly, like I said, it was a big stack of vampire books in a month. Thank you. This is Vampire Culture by Maria Melons, another nonfiction book. This one's actually categorized under fashion because I believe it's about the lifestyle of the vampire subculture. Vampire Culture is the first ethnographic study to explore women's long-standing love affair with the undead. It's true. We do love the undead. The first decade of the 21st century has displayed an ever-increasing fixation with vampires, from phenomenally successful books, film, and television programs to the return of vampire-like style on the catwalk. We're allowed to wear goth clothes again! Not without being judged. We'll always be judged. But we can do it! Amidst this hype, there exists a small, dedicated community that has been celebrating their interest in vampire since the early 1990s. It's not a new subculture. It's been around even before then. Through unique and exciting case studies, Melons investigates the London vampire subculture, a little-known alternative lifestyle community of people from all walks of life and all ages, from train drivers to university lecturers, who organize events such as fang fittings, gothic belly dancing, late-night graveyard walks, and carve your own tombstone, and asks how this fascination impacts their lives from fiction to fashion. Well, I can tell you how it impacts my life. I made a career out of talking about vampires on the internet. I guess it is my life. This extraordinary account is an essential read for students and scholars of gender, film, television, media, fashion, culture, sociology, and research methods, as well as anyone with an interest in vampires, style, subculture, and the Gothic. That's me! Thank you so much for sending this to me. This is not a book that I was familiar with, and it's got a lot of cool photographs and information, adding to my vampire reference library. Have you been interested in all these vampire books I've been telling you? Are you like frantically scribbling notes trying to remember what I've said so you can go out and find this book or look for it in your library? Have you gone back to the, 6 other videos I've done about books and you're like, it's just so many, I can't keep track. Did she already talk about that book? I don't know. I have a book that she should read, but maybe she already has it. Well, I decided to finally make a list of all the vampire books that I have since mentioned here in video form for you that I currently possess. And I have added that list to my Amazon storefront just because it's a convenient way to catalog things. And then you can click the link and go and read the summary on the Amazon page and then, go find it and buy it wherever you actually want to buy it. So that list is in the description of this video, and I'm going to add it to all the other vampire books videos I've made just to make it easy. So you can go and see all these books I just told you without having to try to write them down or rewind this video. Not that you shouldn't watch my videos more than one time, and leave me comments and ask me about books and tell me other books that I should add to my wish list, which is different from my list of books I already own that I'm talking about right now. And like this video, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Patreon, follow me on Twitter, and please talk to me about the vampire books and also movies and TV shows and anything else you can think of that you love. Thank you again to everyone who sent me books at my P.O. box. If that's something that interests you, the address is in the description like it always is. If it's not, just talk to me about your books on the internet. I love hearing about it. Good night.